Hello, hello. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this new time slot, Tuesday. Thank you for watching. If you're watching this in the future, thank you for watching this. If you're watching live, well, today we're going to be talking about a research paper written by a PhD scientist who is really well known in the UFO community. He's an astronomer, a computer scientist, a data scientist, Silicon Valley entrepreneur. He was the inspiration for a character in Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And I have a lot of respect for him. He's written a lot of great books, and he's got a lot of new, interesting ideas on the paranormal and UFOs. And so we're going to read one of his papers. He's going to list about 5 different arguments against the extraterrestrial hypothesis for UFOs. I'm guessing that the paper we read earlier about Hal Puthoff, the Hal Puthoff paper we read about ultra-terrestrials, I'm guessing that paper took a lot of inspiration from this paper we're about to read and about the ideas of Dr. Jacques Vallée. I think the number one explanation for UFOs, if they are extraordinary, is extraterrestrials. But the number 2 is probably what Jacques Vallée thinks, which is basically, some form of non-extraterrestrials. We'll see what he says in this paper. But let me say hello to everybody. So we got Melinda. Thank you for being here, Melinda. I sure do love your input. John P. Adventures. Thank you for being here, brother. I sure do love your good vibes. And I always feel good having you guys here. And hello to everybody else in the room. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this paper. There is a link to this paper in the description. If you want to download it yourself, it's a PDF. Read along or examine it at your own time. It was written in 1990. So yeah, we'll see what it says. I guess I was going to talk about some video games that I bought yesterday real fast. I'm really considering adding another day. Oh, hey, Nina. Thank you for being here, Nina. I'm really considering adding another day of streaming. And in that day, I'll just play video games. And we could just talk and chill. And you guys could ask me anything. So I'm really curious if you guys have a certain day that a third day that would work for you. So then, yeah, I guess just start playing video games because I have a lot of video games. I can even publish my list of video games. I think it's at about 500, and you guys can pick whatever game I play. Hey, Scotty, thank you for being here. So yeah, I'm definitely thinking about adding a third day just to play video games because I actually don't have a lot of time to play video games. So if I made it a stream, it would kind of be a reason for me to catch up on all these video games that I have. And I also definitely want to hook up I definitely want to start hooking up a camera to my microscope here. Ugh. This is a small one, but yeah. I have a lot of research to do, so I'd love to do it with you guys. And so I have this, this is called a dissecting microscope. Dissecting microscope because you have a large area here. So you could literally dissect something and look at it through here. And the other type of microscope that's commonly used is called the slide microscope. And you've probably seen that one. You just put a little glass slide underneath it. The slide microscope, usually you get up to much higher magnifications, but you are limited. You can't really manipulate your subject. But with this one, I mainly use this for insects. So yeah, here's the eyepieces. I think there's some way I could hook up a camera to show you guys what I'm doing. But I have this one project I need to finish, identifying all these beetles, and it's actually a project I'm doing with the government, United States Parks and Wildlife Service. So I should get that one done. I don't want to get Uncle Sam disappointed in me. I want that uncle to be happy with me. But yeah, those are the 2 things I'm thinking about doing: video games and microscope work to share with you guys. But yeah. Anyway, speaking of video games, yeah, let me just show you what I picked up before we start going over the paper, and we'll let some more people come in. But yeah, so I picked up a few. So I got this one, Fallout New Vegas. This is originally came out for the Xbox 360 and for the PlayStation 3. And now it's backwards compatible with the Series X, the latest console for Microsoft. And it's supposed to be one of the best role-playing games ever. I only played a few minutes of it. But this would be a good game to play on stream because, it's a role-playing game, so you make a lot of decisions. Hey, Nancy. Thank you for being here, Nancy. You make a lot of decisions. You could be a good guy or a bad guy. There's a lot of dialogue. The Fallout series takes place in a post-apocalyptic world. This one takes place, in Nevada, and it has to do with, there's basically a nuclear holocaust, and people live underground in these vaults. And I think all of the games take place with the character coming out of the vault and exploring the wasteland. And there's monsters, there's mutants, and there's a lot of games in the series, and this one is supposed to be one of the best ones. So excited to play that. And then another Xbox game. This is called Call of Duty Modern Warfare Remastered Edition. So what a remastered is you take an older video game and you update it in some way. You make the graphics better or the performance better. But I think a lot of people think this Call of Duty Modern Warfare is one of the best video games in modern times that has come out. It is a shooting game. You play the United States military. It's got a lot of good set pieces, I've heard. So it's kind of like watching an action movie. But I've also never played this game. I'm kind of lucky because a lot of these big games that are getting remastered, I never played them originally. So I never played the inferior version. So the first time I played them, I get to play the optimized version, with the better gameplay and the better graphics. So I'm excited to play that one. There's another older game for PlayStation 3 called Saints Row 2. This is a third-person game, open-world game, kind of like Grand Theft Auto. But apparently, Saints Row 2 is supposed to be one of the best ones in this game series. This is another series of games. And it's just supposed to be fun and wacky and just, you can have a lot of mayhem. So I've also never played that one, so that'll be fun. Okay, then, here's another remastered game. So this is a racing game called Need for Speed Hot Pursuit Remastered Edition. So once again, they clean up the graphics. They make the gameplay really smooth. But this is supposed to be like a no-nonsense, just like racing game. You just go in and have a good time. And I've read a lot of good things about that. This is a good game just to relax to. Kind of turn off your brain cells. Oh, and then lastly, another remaster. Oh, man, I didn't realize I had so many remasters. So this is Batman Return to Arkham. And so this takes two Batman games and it remasters them. So there's a game called Batman Arkham Asylum and a video game called Batman Arkham City. And in these games, you basically, it's a Batman simulator. You get to play Batman and use all his tricks and different weapons, and you get to, hide in the shadows and beat people up. And once again, I never played the original version, so I get to play the updated version. So that would be a lot of fun. All right. Let's see. Melinda says, we got a PS5 a few months ago, my first console ever. Wow, that's great. Congratulations, Melinda. Do you play that with your family, with your son a lot? And wow, that is a great console. For it to be your first console, that's really fun. Okay, so yeah, I got the paper here, so I'm gonna go ahead and pull it up, and let's start reading. Let's find out why UFOs are probably not extraterrestrials. Although I suspect some of them are. There's another guy that I want to have on called Preston Dennett. If you just do a search for him anywhere online or on YouTube, he's very prolific. He does a lot of good videos, but I have interviewed him a little bit, and he's 100% toward the extraterrestrial hypothesis. Not only that, but he takes everything the Greys tell us, when they abduct us, what people report they have said, he takes it all literally. So he believes there's really no deception, that their story is true. And he seems to be very, very knowledgeable about that. So if I interviewed him, my questions would be like, okay, how do we proceed? How do we go forward? My questions would be like, okay, so according to you, let's just go with what you believe, which is that, abductions are real, that UFOs are real, and they're all caused by extraterrestrials. And that by and large, extraterrestrials are good and they want to help us. So let's go with that idea. And I would ask him, okay, well, how do we proceed? What do you recommend each person does? What can we do to help move this along? What should we avoid doing? What can we expect in the future? I really just want to get that kind of knowledge up from him. But yeah, let's see. Melinda says, I play with my 10-year-old son. Great. I like Sackboy. Yeah, Sackboy's a great game. He plays things like Fortnite with his friends. Great multiplayer game. We played on a 65-inch TV that I got for my 50th birthday a few months ago. We had old school TVs. Oh, great! Wow. Well, congratulations. You're really up to date with your technology. That's really great. Well, that being said, let's go ahead and I'm going to pull up this paper. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay. There we go. This one. Share. Okay. Let me add it to the stream. There we go. Cool. All right. Well, yeah, let me pull up the paper. Do this. And I have it conveniently already pulled up. All right. So let's full screen this paper. All right. So here it is. Here's the PDF. Let's get it zoomed in here. Okay. So this research paper was published in the Journal of Scientific Exploration. And it just gives you a little more information. The 4th volume, number 1 of that volume. And it tells you the pages. These journals are actually like, they're kind of thick. They have a lot of different articles in there. And so, this one takes up pages 105 through 117. And it was published in 1990. All right. So 5 arguments against the extraterrestrial origin of unidentified flying objects. We'll start by reading the abstract, which once again, the abstract for any scientific paper is a summary of the entire paper. So if you're in a rush, if you have a lot of papers to read, you should be able to read the abstract and you get a pretty good idea of what's in there. And then if you want to know more of the details, well, you could read everything, like what we're going to do. But yeah, let's go ahead and get started here. It says, scientific opinion has generally followed public opinion in the belief that unidentified flying objects either do not exist, and he calls this the natural phenomenon hypothesis, or if they do exist, they must represent of a visitation by some advanced race of space travelers, the extraterrestrial hypothesis, or the ETH. So yeah, he's saying that basically, if you ask a general person in the audience, a non-scientist, they're either going to tell you UFOs are just natural phenomenon, they don't exist, or they're going to say they're from another planet. Same thing for a scientist. Okay. It is the view of the author that research on UFOs need not be restricted to these 2 alternatives. On the contrary, the accumulated database exhibits several patterns tending to indicate that UFOs are real, represent a previously unrecognized phenomenon, and that the facts do not support the common concept of quote-unquote space visitors. 5 specific arguments articulated here contradict the ETH, or extraterrestrial hypothesis. Number 1, unexplained close encounters are far more numerous than required for any physical survey of Earth. Number 2, the humanoid body structure of the alleged quote-unquote aliens is not likely to have originated on another planet and is not biologically adapted to space travel. Number 3, the reported behavior in thousands of abduction reports contradicts the hypothesis of genetic or scientific experimentation on humans by an advanced race. Number 4, the extension of the phenomenon throughout recorded human history demonstrates that UFOs are not a contemporary phenomenon. And number 5, the apparent ability of UFOs to manipulate space and time suggests radically different and richer alternatives, 3 of which are proposed in outline form as a conclusion. All right, so yeah, that is a good abstract. And it looks like in the conclusion, he doesn't seem like he knows, based on the writing of this paper, what UFOs are, but he does seem to have 3 alternatives, which he strongly believes could be a cause of UFOs. And none of these 3 alternatives are extraterrestrials. All right. Initial hypothesis. Over the last 40 years, we have observed the steady development of a group of aerial phenomenon generally referred to as unidentified flying objects, or UFOs. After a brief attempt to explain the reports in terms of secret prototypes or the advanced technology hypothesis, two major explanations have captured the attention of the public, the media, and the scientists. These two theories are the natural phenomena hypothesis and the extraterrestrial hypothesis, or ETH. A large majority of the scientific community, which is typically unaware of the observational data except as reported in popular press, continues to support the natural phenomenon hypothesis. It asserts that all the reports can be explained as a combination of observing errors, classical atmospheric phenomenon, and human-made objects, possibly combined with little-known psychological illusions, which are of no relevance to physics. It concludes that no new knowledge is to be gained from further specialized study of the observations by professional scientists, perhaps with the exception of marginal improvements to the documentation of some altered states of perception. All right, well, what's kind of sad about this statement is that, okay, so this was in the 90s, so I believe this is, 32 years. And so what's sad is that this was 3 decades ago, and this statement is still correct. Nothing has really changed in 3 decades. By and large, people don't think that it's important to study UFOs, other than maybe improving the documentation of some altered states of perception. What he's saying here is that perhaps some UFOs are just a psychological illusion or phenomenon in the human brain, so it's not a physical object. So that's kind of interesting. The more things change, the more they stay the same, as they say. A majority of the public and what's going on here? Quasi-totality of the UFO researchers have supported the ETH. I've never seen this word in my life. I'm going to guess quasi-totality based on root words. It means almost everybody. Not quite everybody. That's what I'm going to guess quasi-totality means, but we'll see. Okay, quasi-totality means, but the vocabulary, near totality. So yeah, I was right. Near totality. All right. So a majority of the public and the near totality, or mostly every single UFO researcher, have supported the extraterrestrial hypothesis. Under this hypothesis, UFOs are physical devices controlled by intelligent beings from another planet who have been visiting the Earth as part of a scientific survey begun at the time of World War II, very much in the fashion we ourselves plan to follow in exploration of remote planetary environments. In their interpretation of the phenomenon, this survey includes the reconnaissance of strategic sites, the gathering of mineral and plant samples, and sophisticated interaction with the human and animal life forms present on the planet. What's interesting here is that he does not use the Oxford comma. I used to not use the Oxford comma, so the Oxford comma would have been used right here. You would put a comma right after samples, but now I do use it. I've switched. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, but that is just a grammar observation. Okay, the recent interest in reported abductions of witnesses has contributed what many UFO researchers regard as convincing evidence that such extraterrestrial visitors are conducting a series of biological interventions designed to collect samples of human tissue and body fluids. Human tissue and body fluids. Sounds like a party. And are engaged in crossbreeding experiments for genetic purpose. All right, so I mean, we all agree with this. What he just summarized, we've all heard this before. There's nothing new here. But, he's just setting up where we're at. You got to set up the foundation, and now we're going to go into challenges. All right. The slow but steady accumulation of detailed reports and the continued research on old cases make it possible to test these hypotheses against an increasingly documented database. Interesting. Let's go ahead and check on comments. Make sure everything's still running well. Whoop. Okay. Let's see. Go ahead and do this. Okay. Okay, Nancy says, I know Vallée has a following, but after having read some of his books, I was not that impressed. Oh, very interesting. I'm curious, what books are you talking about? Was it some of his older books or maybe some of his more recent books? Um, yeah, I'd be curious. Look, I will say that I don't know, I've heard him talk. He was on Joe Rogan recently, and yeah, I don't know. I mean, he's getting up there in age, so um, he didn't have the same energy, but I mean, I can't blame him for that. I mean, he is getting up there in age. But yeah, Nancy, let me know which books you're talking about. I'm curious. All right, so let's go back. All right. Okay. Okay. The natural phenomena hypothesis does not fare well under these tests. Many reports are quite specific in terms of the physical and biological parameters that can be derived from an analysis of the interaction between the phenomenon and the environment. A presentation by Velasco at the 1989 SSE conference has pointed out that no less than 38% of the cases studied by the French CNES, or Centre National de Estudios Spatiales, the French equivalent of NASA, have failed to be identified in terms of natural effects. Okay, the cases studied. Interesting. Let's see. The natural phenomena hypothesis does not fare well under these tests. Many reports are quite specific in terms of physical and biological parameters. Interaction between phenomena and environment. I got to say that paragraph kind of stumped me, but let's move on. The environmental interactions most often reported include abrasions, burns, and effects on plants, animals, and humans. Okay, so now I'm understanding. Yeah. So yeah, UFOs do have a physical, when they land or when they get close to the crust of the Earth, the top of the crust, they do seem to leave abrasions, burns, and effects on plants, animals, and humans. That's undoubtable. The work of Velasco and Baunias in Trans and Providence, submitted for publication, is a case in point. So is the recent research done in Brazil, which will be part of a forthcoming report on fieldwork conducted privately by the author over the last 10 years. Vallée and Press, a summary of the Brazilian studies, was also presented at the July 1989 MUFON meeting in Las Vegas, Nevada. The observed phenomena include radiation effects, and have not been accounted for by a combination of known physical and psychological causes. Okay, so he's saying it looks like he did 10 years of research in Brazil. Brazil was a really big hotspot for UFOs, especially along the Amazon River. He said there was radiation effects that he observed when studying these cases. And he said that, yeah, those cases cannot be accounted for by physical and psychological causes. He's indicating that there's got to be something else to these UFOs, something extraordinary. At the time, however, we find that the extraterrestrial hypothesis, too, is increasingly challenged by the new patterns researchers are uncovering. 5 major contradictions worthy of special examination will be studied in this paper. They have to do with the surprisingly high frequency of close encounters, with the physiological description of the occupants, with the contents of the abduction reports, with the historical extension of the phenomenon, and with the physical behavior of the reported craft. We will discuss these 5 points in turn, then we will propose a new hypotheses attempting to take these objections into account. Argument number 1. Approximately 20 years ago, when the first catalog of close encounter reports was compiled by Vallée in 1969, I was surprised to find that it reached over 900 entries, well beyond the expectations of most researchers at the time. With the increased attention now placed on the category of sightings, the lists of unexplained close encounters have grown beyond this early catalog. Estimates place the size of the current sample between 3,000 and 10,000 cases, depending on the criteria that are used. We offer the figure of 5,000 as a conservative estimate. So he's saying that there's a lot of close encounters. He's saying conservatively 5,000. Yeah, that is a lot of close encounters. This remarkably large number can and should be used as a challenge to the natural phenomenon hypothesis. If UFOs were simply a peculiar atmospheric effect, such as a plasma discharge, I love plasma. I want to start researching plasma. I mentioned it in my first episode of Science is Strange. Plasma is, I think, the fifth state of matter. It's got all these ions. It's got interesting properties. It's the most common form of matter in the universe, but it is often said to be a cause of paranormal phenomenon and UFOs. Okay. But he's saying if UFOs were simply plasma discharge, most of the still unidentified cases would be accounted for by taking into consideration their corresponding patterns. It should also be stressed that we are not concerned here with the general appearance of UFOs in the sky, but with the close encounters only. That's good. Yeah, close encounters are much more interesting than lights in the sky. Those dramatic episodes in which witnesses describe a phenomenon in their immediate vicinity. Very cool. Yet the same argument can be used against the extraterrestrial hypothesis. It is difficult to claim that space explorers will need to land 5,000 times on the surface of a planet to analyze its soil, take samples from its flora and fauna, and produce a complete map. While the ETH could perhaps account for 923 landings reported in our 1969 compilation, the theory can no longer be supported today. Okay. So what he's saying is that there's been at least 5,000 times that the crafts have landed. And he's saying that if these are UFOs from another planet and they're analyzing the soil and taking samples of the flora and fauna, which I will say that's what I do. I'm not an extraterrestrial, but I do go to places on this planet and I do take samples of, I have taken soil samples because some of the animals, I've taken soil samples, I've taken samples of plants, and I have taken samples of animals. And he's saying that 5,000 times is just way too much. There doesn't need to be that many samples. Now, I'm going to read a little bit further, but I think I'm going to go against him here. I'm going to push back on this idea. Neither is the figure of 5,000 a good estimate. Many indications converge to show that only one case in 10 may actually be reported. Yeah, which is true. That's what Fred Roll, which we had on just a few days ago, on a killer subarctic Alaska Bigfoot. He pointed out that, a lot of cases do not go reported. And he's estimating that, for every 10 cases that someone has of a really close encounter, perhaps only one of those cases would be reported, which that's totally believable. Therefore, the number of close encounters we need to explain is probably in the order of 50,000. This does not take into account the fact that the overwhelming majority of our sources are located in Europe, the American continent, and he's talking about Europe, and I think the reason why is because Jacques Vallée is French. I think he lives in California now, but he is from France. The American continent and Australia. So he's saying that these samples are from Europe, the American continent, and Australia. It is logical to assume that the phenomenon is worldwide, and that we are missing the true magnitude of the problem, at least by a factor of 2. This leads to a figure of 100,000 events. That's a lot of close encounters. If we remain faithful to a strict interpretation of the ETH, even this very large figure still underestimates the real number of actual landings. Shouldn't we assume that extraterrestrial explorers would land on our planet without regard to the presence of human witnesses? In fact, Power and I found, using independent database, that the geographic distribution of close encounters does not indicate a pattern of avoidance of population centers. Interesting. With a higher relative incidence of landings in deserts and in areas without dwellings. Okay, so he says that the geographic distribution of close encounters is, it doesn't, I'm sorry, I misread that. So he found that the geographic distribution of close encounters does indicate a pattern of avoidance of population centers with a higher relative incidence of landings in deserts and areas without dwellings. Okay, that's interesting. So according to this analysis he published in 1975, he's saying that most encounters do seem to avoid population centers, and you're more likely to see them in the desert or in areas without dwellings, without people living. If we follow this line of reasoning, then it would be conservative to multiply our number by a factor of 10 to account for the high ratio of the sparsely populated over densely populated lands. This would place our estimate at 1 million landings to be explained. Okay, this number keeps growing. But yeah, I agree. 1 million landings, that's a lot of That's a lot of landings. In other words, if human witnesses were equally distributed over the surface of the land, and if they reported every close encounter they observed, the data universe would contain 1 million records. Huh. This number still does not take into account another important pattern in the phenomenon, namely its nocturnal character. Okay. First published in 1963, this pattern shows no significant variation between older and more recent cases, and even yields the same distribution when a very homogeneous sample of previously unreported cases from a single region is analyzed. Okay, so he's saying that he's pointing out some patterns. He's been analyzing data with another scientist, and he says that, number one, close encounter landings seem to take place in deserts and areas without human dwellings. And it seemed to take place at night, not during the day. So this indicates that they seem to be wanting to avoid humans spotting them. Okay. So he says figure 1 shows the frequency of close encounters as a function of local time of day for 3 different non-overlapping samples compiled by the author. Namely, A, an international catalog of 326 cases prior to 1963. B, he's talking about a graph we're going to look at in a little bit. B, an international catalog comprising 375 cases for the periods of 1963 to 1970. And D, 100 cases from Spain and Portugal. On these curves, it can be seen that the number of close encounters is very low during the daylight hours. It starts increasing about 5 p.m. and reaches a maximum at about 9 p.m. Okay, so according to his analysis, 9 p.m. So according to this analysis, if you want to see a UFO, you're more likely to see it at 9 p.m. in a desert away from human habitations. Okay. It is then it decreases steadily until 1 a.m. Then it rises again to a secondary peak about 3 a.m. So there's another peak at 3 a.m. And it returns to its low diurnal level by 6 a.m. Okay, so you're less likely to see one. So if you don't want to see UFO, you should be out at 6 a.m. in an area that is not a desert with a lot of houses. Okay. After these curves were published, other researchers have conducted their own studies and have led to similar results. Okay, so this is good because if you remember, the 2 parts of science that you need is repeatability and falsifiability. But repeatability is being able to have the results show up consistently. So he's showing that other scientists have done the same study and they're showing the same thing. So they're having repeatability. And so he's going to say, for example, in particular, Merritt, that's the name of a researcher. And when it says the date, 1977, he's referring to a study that happened in 1977. And at the bottom of the paper under Works Cited, you could see the name of that paper and you could find out where it's been published. So that's what that means. So in particular, Merritt, working with Saunders, UFO cat files, found that electromagnetic effect cases, physical trace reports, and occupant reports had a major peak at 9 p.m. and a low daytime average. Interesting. I didn't know this. 9 p.m., huh? The occupant report showed a secondary peak at 3 a.m. Okay, interesting. Researcher Randalls in 1981 conducted her own study of 223 cases from the files of 2 British groups and found a very similar pattern of high nocturnal activity with a major evening peak and a secondary pre-dawn peak. Abduction reports, however, showed a maximum about midnight. Okay. So according to this one study done by Randalls, who studied 223 cases from British cases, she found you're most likely to be abducted at midnight. Very interesting. Given such a stable pattern, we are led to ask, what would the hourly distribution look like if we had a constant number of potential witnesses? In other words, if people did not retire at night. Okay, interesting. The answer can be approximated by taking the average distribution of outdoor populations as a function of time of day and computing a deconvolution against the sighting report curve. This operation yields an activity curve that rises continuously throughout the night and peaks at 3 a.m. It also shows that the total number of actual events should be 14 times the number of observed phenomenon. This gives a total estimate of 140 million landings in 40 years. if we strictly adhere to the extraterrestrial hypothesis. Okay, so after he did all this fancy analysis with the data, he said that there's been about a 14 million landed reports in 40 years. Geez, that's a lot. Okay, let's look at this figure. Let me make it smaller. Okay, so yeah, when you look at a figure like this, what you're going to look at is we have the x-axis, which is at the bottom, and you have the y-axis, which is at the left. Y-axis goes up and down, and the data is displayed in the middle. Okay, and this is just a way to visually show data. So what he's saying here is at the bottom, we have local time, and so it looks like, yeah, let's see. So yeah, at the bottom we have local time starting from one end to the other. And then at the left hand, we have normalized distribution. And up here we have midnight. Okay. So yeah, okay. So when you get to this part right here, I believe that's a 24. So this is midnight. This is 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. down here, 4 a.m. And then over here will be 11 p.m. But yeah, he's showing all these different data sets of these little curves are different reports of sightings. And he's showing that, yeah, if you look closely and you graph them, that, you know, the majority of them are up here right before midnight, which would be 9 p.m. So yeah, basically you see, he mentioned the second peak, which is right here. So this is basically what you're looking here is a visual representation of abductions based on time. And you can see that the information peaks right here, 9 p.m., and another peak around 3 a.m. And then you see it's very low over here and low over here. Okay, very cool. Okay. The question to be answered is, what objectives could extraterrestrial visitors to Earth be pursuing? What would require them to land 14 million times on our planet? That is an interesting question. Okay. Well, before we go forward, let me just check on the comments. Okay. Oops. So Nancy says that the book she was talking about was Dimensions, a casebook for alien abductions. I have a PDF of that book. I don't think I've read that one fully, but interesting. Can you tell me more, Nancy? I'd like to know more. You know, what particularly about his writing in that book did you not think was great? I would just like to know, just out of curiosity. And then Melinda, if you microwave 2 grapes, it will create a plasma fireball where they touch. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, so we could all make our own plasma. And I also believe neon light, any neon light you have, you're looking at, it has plasma in it. Very interesting. You know, that reminds me, let me look at something up real fast, because I think someone was saying that plasma has properties of life. Plasma properties of life. Let's see if that's true. I'll have to do that. That involves heavy heavy YouTube research. But yeah, basically what I read somewhere was that, you know, these plasma balls, apparently someone was trying to make an argument that, you know, there's this list of what life should be. You know, one of them is like being able to reproduce, and I'm not sure what all the other ones are. But somebody was trying to argue that plasma should be its form of life because it shares a lot of these properties that biological life has. But I'll have to do a little deeper digging to do that paper. But yeah, let's go back. So far I've learned a lot about abductions and about close encounters. I learned that the estimate is about 14 million throughout the globe in a 40-year period. I did not realize it was that much. And I realized that you're more likely to get abducted at midnight. You're more likely to have a close encounter at 9 p.m. and 3 a.m. And that you're more likely to have a close encounter in a desert or an area without people. But yeah, let's go back. All right. paper. Okay. The question to be answered is, what objectives could extraterrestrial visitors to the Earth be pursuing? Yeah, what would require them to land 14 million times on our planet? It should be kept in mind that the surface of the Earth is clearly visible from space. Okay, that's true. Yeah, the surface of the Earth is clearly visible from space, unlike Venus or other planetary bodies shrouded in a dense atmosphere. Furthermore, we have been broadcasting information on all aspects of our various cultures in the form of radio for most of the century and in the form of television for the last 30 years. So that most of the parameters about our planet and our civilization can be readily acquired by unobtrusive remote technical means. Okay, so he's saying, look, if there are extraterrestrials out there and they want to learn about our planet, they could literally look at our planet from without ever going near our planet. They could use a telescope or some other kind of technology. And if they wanted to learn about our cultures, they could just listen to our radio broadcast. So this would not require them landing on a planet. The collection of physical samples would require landings, but it could also be accomplished unobtrusively with a few carefully targeted missions of the type of our own Viking experiments on Mars. All these considerations appear to contradict the ETH. Interesting. Here's another graph. So once again, at the bottom in the x-axis, we have time of day. And in the y-axis, we have percentage of total reports. And we're seeing some peaks as well. Here's a big peak right here. If you follow the peak down, it seems to be, right around 9 o'clock. Yeah. Okay. Argument number 2, physiology. The vast majority of reported aliens have a humanoid shape that is characterized by 2 legs, 2 arms, and a head, supporting the same organs of perception that we have, in the same number and general appearance. Their speech uses the same frequency range as ours. Oh, I don't know. Their speech uses the same frequency range as ours. I didn't know they talked. I didn't know enough of them to talk to know that they could, but anyway. And their eyes are adapted to the same general segment of the electromagnetic spectrum. This indicates a genetic formulation that does not appear to differ from the human genome by more than a few percentage. Basically saying, look, these guys look a lot like we do. You know, their head, their ears, their eyes, their voice. It's almost exactly like ours, which you wouldn't think would be the case if they came from another planet. Now, this is assuming that everything we see is true, that they're not, because they could be wearing, the way they look as a gray. What if that's like a suit? What if they don't really look that way? What if there's an illusion? He's assuming that what we see is genuine. Such an observation, if the entities were in fact the product of independent evolution on another planetary body, as stated by the ATH, would stretch our understanding of biology. Humans share the unique combination of gravity, solar radiation, atmospheric density, and chemical composition known on Earth, with an array of creatures closely related to us through evolution. Yet deprived of legs and arms like dolphins, or endowed with multiple eyes like spiders. Okay. It should also be kept in mind that the human shape has evolved in response to an extremely narrow set of constraints. For example, it would not exist as it does today if Earth had started out with twice the present mass. So if there was twice as much matter, if the Earth was twice as big, that's not exactly correct, but that's just a way to understand it. Given a surface gravity 1.3 times Earth normal. So he's saying if Earth were just a little bit different, then we would look different. So he's saying if the Earth had more mass, more matter in it, then the gravity would be larger. And he's saying such an environment would have forced the development of a stronger skeleton and might have precluded bipeds altogether. So he's saying if this Earth were more massive in this scenario, we'd have a stronger skeleton to support us because the gravity would be bigger. And we might not be bipeds. We might not walk on 2 feet. So we might walk on 4 feet. Similarly, a planet with half its present mass and surface gravity of 0.73 times what it is now would have radically affected our shape. Okay. So he's saying, once again, if the gravity were less, it would also radically affect the way our bodies look. As pointed out by Dole in 1969, if the inclination of the equator had been 60 degrees instead of 23.5 degrees, seasonal weather changes would be intolerable for life. Oh, interesting. Life would have great difficulty in getting started, and humans would have evolved in very different ways. If the day was 100 hours long instead of 24 hours, mankind as we know it would not have evolved or survived at all. How then can we expect that extraterrestrial visitors from a completely different planetary environment would not only resemble us, but breathe our air and walk normally on the Earth? Yeah, interesting. Yeah, he's basically saying it doesn't make sense that these guys come from another planet because they look and act so much like we do. If they came from another planet, even if that planet was a little bit different than ours, they would look radically different, is what he's arguing. Even if by some unknown principle of exobiology, the aliens did evolve naturally into the humanoid shape, wouldn't they modify their bodies using genetic engineering techniques to enhance their ability to work and survive in space, as humans may do over the next century? Oh, interesting. This last argument can be countered by assuming that our visitors have precisely been created through such genetic manipulation into a form which we can interact. But if that is the case, why not produce human specimens biologically indistinguishable from the Earth's population? So he's saying, okay, right here he's arguing, well, maybe these grays, the reason they are extraterrestrial, but maybe the reason why they look like they were evolved to be on Earth is because they genetically manipulated themselves to look that way. But then he's saying, okay, if they have genetically manipulated themselves so they look and like they belong on this planet, why don't they just make themselves look exactly like humans? You know, why make themselves look weird? Wouldn't it make more sense if they look like regular humans? The extraterrestrial hypothesis fails to give us a convincing answer on this point. Even more intriguing is the observation that the reported aliens display recognizable human emotions, such as puzzlement, interest, or amusement, as in the Betty Hill case of 1961 and the Valenoso case of 1965. This suggests not only biological similarity, but extensive social acculturation. In summary, the physiology of the aliens conforms to human biology and culture to an extent that is not compatible with the ETH. I don't know. Maybe I'm gullible, but I'm starting to believe. Jacques Vallée and what he says. He's making good arguments. Whoop. Okay, let's see. Melinda asks, is data included actual close encounters? Did I miss how they verified them? All these in a desert during dark hours makes me think of a peyote episode and get reported because they seem so real. Oh, interesting. Yeah, so what Melinda is referring to is basically, have the researchers, how have they, if at all, taken measures to assure that the data they're using in their analysis is accurate and high quality? Since I just read it, I don't think they don't mention it at all. So that is correct as well. They are taking these reports of close encounters at face value. There doesn't seem to be a vigorous vetting process to see if they're verified. But that's a good point. We have to take that into consideration as well. Iowax is here, our resident poet and musician. Thank you, Iowax, for being here. He says, I'm an inanimate animal cracker, panda shades. Oh, I like that. That always makes me smile. Well, thank you. Thank you for that, Iowax. All right, let's go back to our paper. I think it's this one. Oh, wait, I got to do this. Got to share my screen. Let's see. Add to stream. Yeah. Okay. So argument number 3, abduction report. So this is going to get juicy. Abduction reports are always like a very interesting topic. The growing number of abduction reports is being used by a vocal segment of the UFO research community as further evidence that we are, in fact, being visited by extraterrestrial aliens, even if their origin has not yet been revealed. In the context of the present paper, a careful survey of the reported behavior of the alleged ufonauts argues exactly the opposite direction. Okay. Melinda, maybe he's going to talk a little more about how he vets his data. Or maybe he's going to clarify that he doesn't really vet it. He just takes these abduction reports at face value. According to the UFO magazines and books, the number of reported and documented abductions is now measured in the multiples of 1,000. Such incidents are characterized by what the witness reports as being transported into a hollow spherical or hemispherical space and being subjected to a medical examination. This is often, but not always, followed by the taking of blood samples, various kinds of sexual interactions, and a loss of time. The entire episode is frequently wiped out of conscious memory and is only retrievable under hypnosis. He's just stating what most people say. At this writing, over 600 abductees have been interrogated by UFO researchers, sometimes assisted by clinical psychologists. Although nothing concrete seems to have been learned from these case studies about the origin and purpose of the visitors, those doing the investigations are vocal in their claim that the abductions are further evidence of the ETH. In order to examine this claim, let us assume that extraterrestrial intelligence has indeed developed the ability and the desire to visit Earth. All right, so yeah, let's assume it. It is a reasonable assumption to expect that such visitors would know at least as much as we do in the fundamental scientific disciplines such as physics and biology. Few ufologists, in fact, argue against this assumption. Okay, yeah, I agree that if extraterrestrials are visiting us, that, yeah, they know at least as much as we do about the fundamentals of physics and biology. In particular, the visitors would presumably know as much about medical techniques and procedures as our own practitioners. Today, the average American doctor can draw blood, collect sperm and ova, or remove tissue samples from his or her patient without leaving a permanent scar or inducing any trauma. The current state of molecular biology, a science which is in its infancy on Earth, would already permit the same doctor to obtain unique genetic fingerprint information from such samples. Okay, yeah. He could also fertilize the ova and obtain test tube offspring. And it is conceivable that cloning could duplicate the beings, thus produce ad infinitum. Okay. A team of scientists equipped with the commonly reported UFO technology would be in an excellent position to take control of blood banks, sperm banks, or collection of embryos available at major research hospitals and research centers without creating the massive disturbances described by abduction reports. Okay. So he's saying, like, if we had scientists today, a team of scientists today, and they had the technology that UFOs have, like, flying in the air, anti-gravity, they could phase through matter, they could paralyze people. Well, he's saying that these scientists, they would be in the excellent position to go ahead and go to a blood bank where a bunch of blood is stored, to go to a sperm bank where a bunch of sperm is stored, and to collect embryos, which are stored at major research hospitals and research centers. And they wouldn't have to create a massive disturbance that is described by abduction researchers. So he's saying, look, what he's saying is, like, if these are extraterrestrials and they want egg, they want sperm, they want embryos, they want ova, instead of going to people's bedrooms and abducting them and traumatizing them, which would, cause a lot of commotion, why don't they just do like a heist, like the Ocean's 11 heist at a sperm bank? They would be able to accomplish it while escaping detection. Equipped with the state-of-the-art techniques of current U.S. medicine, it would be conceivable that the entire human race could be be restarted from this pool of genetic material. Even gene therapy and the creation of hybrid species is well within our theoretical horizon, even if it has not completely been reduced to practice. None of these accomplishments require the procedural behavior of the alien doctors described by abduction researchers. Interesting. Okay, the means of permanently erasing the memory of the victims through the use of appropriate drugs are also available in the current pharmacopoeia. Whatever the supposed aliens are doing, if they actually perform what appear to be shockingly crude and cruel simulacra of biological experiments on our bodies of their abductees, it is unlikely to represent a scientific mission relative to the goals of the extraterrestrial visitors. The answer may have to be sought in other directions. Okay. He's saying that the people, whatever's abducting us, it seems like what they're doing is more of a theater. It's a theater. It's not actually what it appears to be. Because if they really did just want to get samples, why wouldn't they just do it in less conspicuous ways? Maybe the goal is to shock us. Maybe the goal is to traumatize us for some reason. But, I mean, if these are truly extraterrestrial, maybe we're adding a, what is it called? Anthropomorphizing them. We're giving them human characteristics, perhaps. Argument number 4. Let's see what the comments say. Which one? I just forget which one it is. This one? Yeah. Okay, so Melinda says, remember Dolly the sheep was cloned in 1996, and this paper is from 1990. We've come so far since then. Yeah, we have. Now people could do genetic stuff in their basement. You know, you could buy genetic kits and you could do your own genetic. We have CRISPR technology. I mean, it's come a long way. Maybe we're just entertainment for them. Interesting. That would be scary. I mean, for an advanced race to treat us as just entertainment, that is very scary. Very interesting. Okay. Okay, argument number 4, history. The extraterrestrial hypothesis was initially formulated at a time when the earliest sightings known dated from World War II. Okay, yeah. So the extraterrestrial hypothesis was formulated when the earliest sightings that we knew of were from World War II. It could be validly argued that the major conflict was detected from space, and that major conflict was detected from space, and that the observation of nuclear explosions on Earth precipitated the aliens' decision to survey our planet, perhaps in an effort to assess the human race as a potential threat to other intelligent life forms. That reminds me of something I was going to talk about in the Hal Puthoff paper. This came to me in a dream that I had after we did that episode. If these are ultra-terrestrials that live in the ocean, the reason why they would be so upset about nuclear weapons was because we did set off a lot of nuclear weapons in the ocean. I mean, we literally just dropped nukes straight into the ocean, straight into their house. So that would definitely, I mean, if I was an advanced race that lived in the ocean and someone dropped a nuke in my house, that would definitely upset me. And the Fukushima nuclear power plant disaster also spilled, and I believe is still spilling nuclear waste directly into the ocean. That's just something I wanted to say that I had in a dream. The mounting proliferation of evidence for similar phenomena, not only before 1945, but during the 19th century, and indeed in the remote past of our culture, has become convincing. Although some ufologists, barring an argument from the skeptical opponents, are now pleading that such data should simply be disregarded. Okay, interesting. If it can be established that the phenomenon has indeed existed throughout history, adapting only its superficial shape, if it can be established that the phenomenon has indeed existed throughout history, adapting only its superficial shape, but not its underlying structure to the expectations of the host culture, then we are unlikely to be dealing with extraterrestrials doing a survey of the Earth. nor are we dealing with advanced prototypes. Again, a more sophisticated class of explanations than both the extraterrestrial hypothesis and the advanced technology hypothesis must be sought. In previous works, I have pointed out that the aerial phenomenon, very similar to our UFOs, has been reported in the 9th century in the form of vessels in the sky, as airships in the days of Jules Verne, as ghost rockets in 1946, and as spacecraft in more recent times, and if they mimicked human expectations. Everything works as if the UFO phenomenon remains consistently one step ahead of human technology. In the last 10 years, as molecular biology has become more glamorous than electronics or even aerospace in our modern civilization, it should not be surprising to find that aliens performing simulacra of genetic engineering interventions. The supporters of the ETH may have fallen into the trap of first-level reading of the phenomenon's message. Okay, so he's saying that the phenomenon of abductions has been around for a long time, that the structure underlying it has stayed the same, but superficially it has changed. It seems like whatever we see as far as UFOs and abduction, it's always just one step ahead of us. It's what's right on the horizon of us. Okay. Such historical considerations combined with extensive research on mythology and folklore have led European researchers like McHoust and Evans to regard the entire UFO phenomenon as a projection of the consciousness of the witness. They point out that the science fiction and legends too stay one step ahead of human scientific realizations. This psychosociological hypothesis has aroused considerable opposition among U.S. ufologists and is now creating a deep chasm between European and American ufology, with the former advocating a second-degree symbolic reading of the discourse presented by the witness. Interesting. The abduction claims are especially interesting to the proponents of the pseudo-sociological theory. It is difficult to find a culture on Earth that does not have an ancient tradition of little people that fly through the sky and abduct humans. It is standard for them to take their victims into a spherical setting that are evenly illuminated and to subject them to various ordeals such as operations on internal organs and astral trips to unknown landscapes. Sexual or genetic interaction is also a common theme in this body of folklore. Wow. And argument 5. Let's see. Interesting. All right, all good. Okay. Argument 5, physical considerations. As witnesses become less reluctant in the reporting of their experiences, the notion that UFOs are somebody else's spacecraft, in the words of Friedman, with the implication of a technology powered by advanced propulsion systems, becomes less tenable and possibly less appealing scientifically than other notions. But the alternative explanations, notably the psychosociological hypothesis, also find themselves severely challenged. Let me take a drink of water. The phenomenon to be explained include not only strange flying devices that are describable as physical craft by the witnesses, but also objects and beings that exhibit the ability to appear and disappear very suddenly, to change their apparent shapes in continuous fashion, and to merge with other physical objects. Such reports seem absurd in terms of ordinary physics because they suggest a mastery of time and space that our own physical research cannot duplicate today. However, if these sightings can be confirmed either by direct observation, by photographic evidence, or by the weight of statistics, they may represent an opportunity to test new concepts. Okay, so in Table 1, he gives us a summary of current hypotheses: advanced technology hypothesis, natural phenomenon hypotheses, extraterrestrial hypotheses, and the psychosocial hypotheses. Okay. He says, so this represents an opportunity to test new concepts, a physical reality in time, when many theoreticians are grappling with the possible existence of the n-dimensional universe, with n greater than 4. So he's talking about a lot of theoretical physicists, many theoreticians are talking about a physical reality that has more than 4 dimensions. Okay. I believe the 4 dimensions that we live in now are, width, height, length, time. I think those are the 4 dimensions. Okay. New hypothesis. In conclusion, it is useful to speculate about several hypotheses that go beyond the earlier theories listed in Table 1. These ideas do take into consideration, with various degrees of success, the 5 objections we have reviewed. These new hypotheses should only be regarded as a means of simulation of discussion, not as formal proposals. One such line of speculation has been advanced by Devereux, who has spoken of UFOs as Earthlights, an unrecognized physical terrestrial phenomenon which impresses the consciousness of the witnesses to take a form of a mental image, possibly a mythological figure. Oh, I didn't know this. So this guy named Devereux, he gave this hypothesis in 1982 that UFOs are Earthlights. And so that what that means is that they're unrecognized, a physical phenomenon that manipulates our consciousness of the witness, and it makes it take a form, a mental image of a mythological figure. And then these 2 other researchers named Dare, that's their last name, and Persinger have extended the proposal of Devereux. Interesting. In the mid-70s, I proposed the approach that UFO phenomenons is a control system, reserving judgment as to whether the control system will turn out to be human, alien, or simply natural. Such control systems governing physical or social events are all around us. They can be found in the terrestrial, ecological, and economical balancing mechanisms that rule nature, some of which are well understood by science. This theory admits 2 interesting variants. 1, an alien intelligent, possibly Earth-based, could be training us towards a new type of behavior. It could represent the visitor phenomenon of Strieber, or some form of supernature, possibly along the lines of the Gaia hypothesis, or that the planet is alive. And right here, when he's referring to Strieber, he's talking about Whitley Strieber. Number 2, alternatively, in a Jungian interpretation of the same theme, the human collective unconsciousness could be projecting ahead of itself the imagery which is necessary for our own long-term survival beyond the unprecedented crises of the 20th century. Oh, interesting. Okay, so here is some new hypotheses in this. So the Earthlight hypothesis, the control system hypotheses, and the worm travel hypotheses. Okay, so this Jungian one is very interesting. So Carl Jung, his interpretation of UFOs was that what we're seeing is a projection of the collective unconscious. So that means the unconscious thoughts of all humans are being projected in the form of UFOs. And that what we're seeing, what that represents, is imagery like UFOs that is necessary for our own long-term survival. Okay, so this is basically a projection. It's caused by humans. It's caused by all the minds of humans. The purpose of UFOs is to show us what we need to do to survive in the future, like build spaceships, basically, and not have nuclear weapons, basically, and treat the planet better. Okay, British researcher Randalls has stressed that the analysis of the discourse of abductees consistently reveals a breakpoint in time, after which the percipient leaves normal reality behind. On the other side of this boundary, ordinary space-time physics no longer seems to apply, and the percipient moves as if within a lucid dream, or indeed a lucid nightmare. Huh. Interesting. Until returning to the normal world, Randalls called this phenomenon the Oz factor. Building on this observation, one could theorize that there exists a remarkable state of psychic functioning that alters the percipient's vision of physical reality and also generates actual traces and luminous phenomenon. visible to other witnesses in their normal state. Huh. Okay. Finally, we could hypothesize extraterrestrial travelers using radical methods of space-time manipulation, notably the use of four-dimensional wormholes for space and possibly even time travel. On this subject, see Morris, Dorn, and Yurtsever. On multiple dimensional models, see Malov. Such travelers could perform many of the physical feats ascribed to ufonauts, and they could also manifest simultaneously throughout what appears to us as different periods of our history. This hypothesis represents an updating of the extraterrestrial hypothesis, where the extraterrestrials can be from anywhere and any time and could even originate from our own Earth. The arguments for multiple dimensional approach to the natural history of the UFO phenomena has been developed by the author in the book Dimensions, which Nancy does not like. Okay. All right. Well, before we read the conclusions, let's just see if anybody. Okay. Everything seems to be good. All right. So, yeah, let's read the conclusion of this paper. All right. Exciting as the extraterrestrial visitations to Earth would be, this paper has pointed out that in the current state of our knowledge, UFO phenomena are not consistent with a common interpretation of this hypothesis. Neither do the observed patterns support the theory that all UFOs can be explained as a combination of natural effects or as psychosociological processes. Therefore, it is proposed that future research in the field could fruitfully explore alternative hypotheses, such as those involving either natural or artificial control systems, Earth lights, or wormhole travel. Interesting. This Earth light is interesting. Earth lights and wormhole travel. Interesting. The arguments raised here are not intended as a complete refutation of the ETH or the natural phenomenon hypotheses. Until the nature and origin of UFO phenomenon can be firmly established, it will naturally be possible to hypothesize that extraterrestrial factors, including undiscovered forms of consciousness, are playing a role in its manifestations. But any future theory should constructively address the facts we have reviewed. At a minimum, the idea of extraterrestrial intervention should be updated to include current theoretical speculation about other models of the physical universe. And there we go. Here are the references that he lists. Okay, so here's that paper. If you wanted to read it, Devereaux, he wrote Earthlights in 1982. So we could look that up. Because that one's really interesting. Let me see if I could find anything about this. So these are all the papers he listed. Okay. Let's see. See if we can find anything about Earthlights. Okay, so it's on Amazon. Yeah. Goodreads. Okay. Let's see. How about we read, what's this one say? Let's look at this Wikipedia article. Yeah, okay, so here we go. Okay, so Wikipedia says, Devereaux states that he suspects a small percentage of unexplained area phenomenon are literally unexplained flying objects, their nature currently unknown. He strongly doubts they are extraterrestrial craft, but rather exotic natural phenomenon, probably some form of plasma with extraordinary properties. Whoops. He coined the term Earthlights to label these types of phenomenon. Most UFO sightings report, he thinks, results from misperceptions of astronomical objects atmospheric effects such as mirages or aircraft and other mundane objects, or downright hoaxes. Some reports he feels also stem from psychosocial causes. Devereaux states that he became interested in unexplained phenomena because of a bizarre sighting of his own in 1967. Devereaux has written 3 books on the topic, Earthlights, and in particular, Earthlights Revelation, and has co-authored with Peter Brooksmith a major work, UFOs and Ufology, and has also written numerous articles on Earthlights and given several lectures. Okay, let's see if we can read about his own sighting. Click on number 4. And here it is, saucers in the sky. Let's see what this takes us to. Okay. So it takes us to this BBC article published in 2007. Let's see. I'm just going to see if it talks about his own sighting. Devereaux. I'm looking for Devereaux. Sorry, guys. I just want to say. Okay, here we go. We're just reading about Devereaux. He says, expert Paul Devereaux says a new golden age during the 1990s, particularly after the broadcast of cult television series The X-Files, has given wave to a current wave of indifference. Mr. Devereaux has drawn on the work of controversial Canadian academic Michael Persinger and believes many unresolved UFO sightings can be explained by earthlights, clouds of plasma being charged by strong electromagnetic fields occurring in areas of seismic activity. Okay, here we go. Having witnessed a UFO that could not initially be explained, Mr. Devereaux has dedicated his life to research. Okay. It says here, it bugged the hell out of me, almost gave me a mental breakdown. I couldn't make it fit into the everyday mundane worldview. Okay. Interesting. I'm trying to see more about his case, but it doesn't, I don't think it details more. Yeah, but this Earthlight thing is very interesting. All right. Well, there's the paper. I gotta say, I liked Hal Puthoff's paper better. I did like it better. I don't know why. It just flowed better. It had more excitement to it, but it was still an interesting paper. Let's see. Here we go. Melinda says, okay. Melinda says that in Contact, the movie directed by Robert Zemeckis, based on a novel by Carl Sagan, the movie came out in 1997. With Jodie Foster, the UFO she met was in the form of her father. The movie was based on Carl Sagan's book of the same name. Yeah, so it projected itself as something more familiar. Melinda says, manifesting as her father fits the idea that UFOs appear as something the brain can handle. Yeah. Devereaux's hypothesis to explain UFO sightings fit with that Harvard professor's explanation you talked about a few episodes back. Yeah. So he's saying, yeah, it's just Earth-like phenomenon. Yeah. I mean, I like that. I think that has something to do with it. Yeah. What's interesting about the Earthlight explanation is that it seems like that phenomena is rare. If it is Earthlights, it's rare and it doesn't last very long. So unless we could figure out how to simulate it in a laboratory, that would explain why we haven't discovered it yet, why we don't understand it. But yeah, that plasma thing is very interesting. And then Melinda says that the paper had good overall broad sweeping ideas. Well, I do agree with that. Yeah. Huh. All right. Well, I guess that concludes this episode, guys. Thank you so much for watching. What do I feel like? I don't know about the extraterrestrial hypothesis anymore. I think there are extraterrestrials, and I think obviously they do come to the planet, and they have come here. But yeah, I don't think that's probably the majority of UFOs. Yeah, I think it's more likely that, yeah, it's more likely that if they are extraterrestrials, they are using some kind of portal or wormhole to get here, and so they're getting here from another time or another place. As far as genetic material, maybe they're targeting people for certain genetic material. Certain people do have extraordinary DNA, and so that's why they're not going to blood banks, because they want to target someone specifically. And I do think there's a lot to the ultra-terrestrial hypothesis. I do think that the ocean probably has intelligent life that lives there, that has been around longer than we have, and they probably have UFOs as well. I agree with what you said about ETs. They came, but most sightings aren't valid. There are other explanations. Yeah, I don't think they're all ETs. Yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot of different ways to study these UFOs. We could get a lot of information by studying the abductees. We could get a lot of information by going to hotspots or areas where a lot of them occur, and yeah. And then we could try to get them to come with Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind by meditating. Apparently, there's ways of getting them to come. But overall, yeah. Okay, well, yeah, I guess my next show is going to be on Friday. I will probably talk about a bunch of just recent science articles that are interesting. My friend, welcome to the show. He sends me these really cool science articles, and I'm just going to dive into them. And they're just really popular new science news, and we'll see what they say. And if you guys have any topics, or if you see an article you want me to talk about or discuss it, go ahead and email it to me, or post a comment in this video, or in any video really, and I'll read it. And if you have any ideas for a topic or a show that you want, also go ahead and leave that in the comments or email me. And overall, yeah, just make sure to comment on all my videos. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't subscribed. And yeah, I really enjoy everybody's contribution, and I sure enjoy talking to you guys. And I look forward to these episodes. So take care and enjoy your week. And thank you for being here. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.